Good evening, everybody. Welcome. While we wait for people to arrive, I will go ahead and share my screen and just briefly play a video. So while we wait for people to log in, I have a little College Make It Happen video, and we will wait for people to log in. Here we go.
Do you want to choose college? We'll tell you all you need to know. Work hard and get some knowledge. Go anywhere you want to go. Do you want to choose college? We'll tell you all you need to know. Work hard and get some knowledge. Go anywhere you want to go.
Listen up. You can do it, you can do it. Make it happen, push through it. You can do it, you can do it. Stay on track, work hard, keep moving. You can do it, you can do it. Make it happen, push through it. You can do it, you can do it. That GPA, don't play, get to it, get to it.
I am Molly the megaphone. I'm here to help y'all get your college on. Like CMIH, college, make it happen, babe. So many campuses to choose from. I'm here to help you find the right one. CMIH, college, make it happen, be great. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's easy to remember, can you listen to C? So let's learn the letters of A through G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's easy to remember, can you listen to C? So let's learn the letters of A through G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Scholarships, grants, loans. I heard there's some money going on. I heard there's some money going on. I heard there's some money going fast. What you want? Heard you helping me get books for the load. What I gotta do, please let me know. Cause I heard there's some money going on.
I'll lead a megaphone and I'm here with Cat.
And it's Super Coach.
Make it happen. Let us know your goals. 3, 2, 1, ready, set, go. Make it happen. Potential, you got a lot, and we wanna see you grow. Make it happen. Knowledge, we wanna get you in college. Make it happen. Hey. Make it happen. Make it happen. Let us know your goals. 3, 2, 1, ready, set, go. Make it happen. Potential, you got a lot, and we wanna see you grow. Make it happen. Knowledge, we wanna get you in college. Make it happen. Hey. Make it happen. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I don't have anybody assisting me on this webinar, so what I will need to do is occasionally, when I'm sharing my slide deck, I'm not able to see anything in the Q&A or in the chat, but go ahead and put any questions you would like into the chat or into the Q&A. I'll try to stop every 5 to 10 minutes or so. So I'll stop sharing screen so that I can look and see any questions that you have typed into the chat or into the Q&A, and I can stop and try to answer them that way. So I won't just talk solid the whole time. I will stop sharing screen occasionally and look for any questions. I do really love questions, and so I want you to ask anything that is on your mind at any time that has to do with going to college or paying for college, anything like that. What I have done now is I've put a copy of the College Make It Happen workbook in the chat, and that is a link. There is also a College Make It Happen app that you can download to your phone for free that has a lot of the same content. And additionally, I'll be posting this webinar on the CalSOAP website before the end of this week, along with a slide deck, so that if you would like access to that, you can go to our website, calsoapsandiego.org, and we have a blog section where time we do a webinar or record something, it's available there along with the slide deck. So I am Carla Whitaker. I'm here from CalSOAP. We are the California Student Opportunity and Access Program. I am here to give you information. Mostly, I'm assuming you're a middle school audience, so it could be middle school students, middle school parents, etc. And I will go ahead and get started with some information. Like I said, though, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll stop occasionally as I can and answer them. So let me go ahead and get started sharing my screen. All right, so as I said, we're the California Student Opportunity and Access Program. Our program down here in Southern California covers San Diego and Imperial counties. So we provide services to students and families in both of those counties. Everything that we do is free. So if you ever hear of a CalSOAP event, a CalSOAP workshop, anything related to CalSOAP, you know that it will be free. We also try to post a lot of things like important deadlines that are coming up, information about opportunities, internships, scholarships, jobs, college application workshops, financial aid workshops. So if you are on social media and you would like to follow us, we're on Twitter and Facebook at San Diego CalSOAP, or our newer account, Instagram, at CalSOAP San Diego. And again, if you happen to be on social media, it's a great way to follow us and find out what's going on. If you're not on social media, I would definitely recommend that you go to our website, calsoapsandiego.org, and check us out there. And or you can sign up there to get a monthly newsletter from us by email if you prefer that instead. So think to yourself what words you think of when you hear college. When you hear the word college, a lot of different things might come to mind. It might be things like classes, tests, debt, loans, tuition, friends, fraternities, sororities. There's so many dorms, finals, midterms. There's lots of things that are all part of college. The basic definition I'm going to give, though, is college is school that you can attend to prepare you for future jobs and careers. So it's after high school. And instead of somebody choosing these for you, it's a time where you can choose your classes and you can choose your major. So instead of somebody telling you, you have to take, this math class, this English class, this science class, this foreign language, history, whatever, you can actually choose the classes and choose what you want to focus most on. We call that your major. And also you can choose the times. So some students prefer to try to get all their classes in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or on Tuesday, Thursday, or they prefer afternoon classes because they're not a morning person, or they prefer morning classes or evening classes. So there's a lot more flexibility in college when it comes to choosing your classes. And speaking of majors, a lot of times students at a young age, they don't kind of understand exactly what a major is. So I explain it as it's a specific subject in which you take the most college classes while you're working on your undergraduate degree. So your major is when you're working on your college bachelor's degree or associates. It's the thing that you're taking the most classes in. These are examples of majors. There are probably dozens, if not hundreds, of majors at different colleges, but these are some examples of common ones or popular ones. You could major in something like engineering, business, biology, English, psychology, health sciences, history, communication, computer science, some type of visual or performing art, education, if you wanted to be a teacher. So basically, a major is the subject in which you're taking the most college classes. And there are many reasons to go to college. One of the first that comes to mind for us is probably the cost benefit. In other words, the more education you have, the more earning potential you have. It is not some kind of a guarantee because, of course, it depends on what you go on to do and what career you want to go into. But I will definitely say that as far as statistically on average, the more education you have, the more earning potential you have on average. These are the earnings over the course of your lifetime. So if you did not graduate from high school, you're likely to make in your lifetime a little bit less than $1 million, which sounds not bad, right? Hey, you're kind of a millionaire in a way, right? But consider that that's spread out over probably 40 or 50 years of work. That's actually not very much money. Now, if you just simply finish high school, okay, if just fulfill your legal obligation to finish high school, you're now up $1.3 million over the course of a lifetime is the average. You can see if you have some college that goes up. If you have an associate, sometimes called a two-year degree, that goes up again. A bachelor's degree, there's a big jump. The average salary of someone with a bachelor's is over $2 million in their lifetime. A master's degree, even more. A professional or doctoral degree, even more. So you can see that, again, this is not the only reason to go to college, but it does give you you a clear idea that on average, the more education you earn, the more earning potential you have as far as making money in a job. But it's not the only reason to go to college. College can be fun. You will learn and grow there. If you either play sports or like to attend sports games, every college has some type of athletics program, and some of them are very robust. A lot of colleges give you the opportunity to study abroad. That means traveling to another country. Your tuition can still be paid by financial aid. And sometimes there's partial scholarships and grants to help money for travel itself. And sometimes people spend a quarter, a semester abroad, or even something short like a spring break. You will find friendships and connections in college that you might never find in any other places. There's a lot of chance to connect with people, to network with people, and also just to become friends with people. All colleges have clubs, leadership opportunities, kind of like their version of associated student body, elected, president of the student body, et cetera. They all have community service opportunities if you are into community service and giving back to your community. They all have some type of career center where they tell you about jobs, interview skills, resume writing, both while you're in college to get something maybe part-time, and or when you graduate or when you leave that college, how to get something more like a career type job. Finding mentors is another thing that you can do in college. Sometimes a TA, a professor, a staff person. Sometimes you'll find someone who can mentor you. And there's also a lot of services available on college campuses. There are always student health centers where you can go if you're not feeling well, where they can give you all kinds of health care. There are career services. There are centers that might be specific to certain identities, certain ethnicities, orientations, a place where you can relate to the other people there, where you will feel like you belong. And I know this sounds like a strange one because college does cost money, but college comes with special discounts to things like movies, shows, restaurants. You have things like a reduced student price for an Amazon account, for an Apple account, for a Mac, things like that. So interestingly, there are lots of little benefits that come along with college as well. All right, I'm just gonna pause there for a moment and stop sharing just to see if there's any questions in the Q&A or in the chat. And I don't see anything yet. Okay, I will go ahead and pick up where I left off. But again, please, if you do have questions, put them in there and I'll stop every now and then and take a look at them. All right. Back to sharing screen. So for students, if you're trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do with my life, right? In terms of like, how am I going to make a living? There's a lot of great work with college and career counselors where they try to get you to figure out what is it that is your life's purpose. Why would you want to get out of bed every day? I mean, everybody needs a job to put a roof over their head, but hopefully you have a job or you get a type of career where it's not just that you have to do it, but something that you also want to do. So there's two Japanese words, if you put them together, ikigai, and it means life worth. So what do you want? What's valuable to you? And what do you want your life to be worth? And what do you want it to be about? So some of these things where they all converge in ikigai is what's your passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. So you need to think about, well, what do I love? What do I love to do? But not just that, like maybe I love to play Candy Crush and maybe I'm good at it. But does the world need another person playing Candy Crush? And can I be paid for playing Candy Crush? Probably not. So I have to start thinking about all of these things. I want it to be something that I love. I also want it to be something that the world needs and therefore that I can be paid for it. And also, of course, I need to get skills in it or be good at it. So start thinking in these broad terms. What do you love to do? What things do you love to do? Are you good at? Do you feel confident? But what also is a problem that needs solving in the world? And what is something that could actually be a vocation, a job? Now, if you're like, hey, I know I love animals, or I'm really passionate about the environment, or I love taking care of elderly people, or whatever it is, but like, what is the career that applies to this? Or I love math, or I love puzzles, but what does that mean in terms of like a job or a career? I strongly recommend this website, CA, that's for California, cacareerzone.org. It has budgeting tools, career videos, all kinds of information on. You can take a little quick self-assessment. It's really easy. It's not even with words. A lot of it is with emojis. And you can figure out What do you love? What are you good at? What does that translate to in terms of a career? So I really strongly recommend cacareerzone.org. It's a great website, especially for students, and it's really user-friendly. That gives you a lot of information about getting info on the careers you might be interested in. And when you look at a career, two of the main questions you want to ask yourself to start your search is when you look up that career, find out how much education does it take, like what's the highest amount of education you need for that career. For example, for an engineer, it's usually a bachelor's degree is the minimum you would need to be an engineer. And then look for the average salary, because probably pay might be a factor that's important to you, especially if you want to support a family, or if you want to purchase a home, or if you need to pay back student loans or something like that. So you can look up whether it's something like post-secondary teacher, like at a college level, a K-12 teacher, an accountant, a nurse, a counselor, a social worker, physical therapist, physician, lawyer. Again, for each of these things, you'll find out, well, what is the education I need? And then what is the average salary that I could start with or that I could ultimately make? So those are two good things to think about when you're researching careers: how much education you need, what's the average salary. Now, if you are looking to stay in San Diego and you're interested in the priority sectors in San Diego specifically, these are San Diego County's priority sectors. We have manufacturing here, education and human development, energy, construction, and utilities. Healthcare is a big one here. Information technology and digital media is a big one in San Diego County. Life sciences and biotechnology is huge. And public administration, like working with nonprofits or in a government sector. If you're specifically interested in, like I said, in staying in San Diego, I would recommend going to workforce.org. They have a My Next Move section that says specifically for San Diego, what are the occupations that are here? And then it gives you, I know it's tiny and it's hard to see here, but those little black dots are what those are is graduation caps. And it shows you how much education, like how many years of education you would need to get into that occupation, specifically in San Diego area. So that's a good place to also do some research, is the San Diego Workforce Partnership website. Okay, a couple things you should know to prepare for college. In terms of students, if you're in grade 6, 7, or 8, what can you do right now, right? The first thing is do more than the minimum, fall in love with reading, do your best in school, right? Study and get into reading. Be an active participant when you're at school. Try to ask questions, seek help. I know people say all the time there are no dumb questions, but it's really true. If you want real answers, you've got to ask the questions. Be your own advocate. If you start asking questions about college, people around you start thinking of you as, oh, this person wants to go to college, and I just heard about a scholarship, or I just heard about a field trip to UCLA, or I just heard about, if they start thinking of you as this person wants to go to college because you talk about college, then you get to hear about opportunities that maybe you wouldn't hear about otherwise. Of course, surround yourself with people who are invested in your success. And don't get completely bogged down in today. I know it's very easy to get caught up in what's going on in your life today, but start thinking about, what classes am I going to take in high school? What elective track am I going to take? Or what career path am I going to be on in high school? Parents, I encourage you to have talks with your student. Well, when you go to college, and you can ask them, like, where do you want to go to college? Do you have any campuses in mind? Or do you want to stay in San Diego? Do you want to stay in California? Do you want to go out of state, and why? And this is something that is not like you ask them once when they're 12 and it never changes. This is the kind of thing you talk about all the time, because people find out about different opportunities, different programs, different types of degrees, and different types of colleges. You can also talk, parents and students can talk together, like, what careers are you interested in? What are your strongest and weakest subjects in school? And that kind of can sometimes help get you on a clearer path of trying to figure out where you're going to go after high school one day. Okay, so now we get into all the acronyms. Education is full of acronyms. We love GPA, AP, A through G, SAT, ACT. So I'm going to break down some of these ones that are used all the time. Make sure you know what they are and how they're used. And at the end of this slide, I definitely will stop sharing and check the chat again, because this slide, often people have a lot of questions about these things. So I will stop. Your GPA is your grade point average. Usually it's on a 0 to 4 or 4+ scale. Colleges will either ask for a weighted or unweighted GPA. That depends if they're adding in extra points for AP classes. But usually the lowest GPA you could get would be a 0. The highest would be a 4 or higher if you're at the point where you can take AP classes or college classes, because those do give you an extra 1 point in your GPA. So for example, normally an A would be worth 4 points. An A in, let's say, AP US History, APUSH, that would be worth 5 points. And a B, while that's normally 3, a B in APUSH is worth 4. So that's why sometimes people have GPAs higher than a 4.0. So advanced placement classes, these are classes that are offered in high school by high school teachers during the high school school day. It's a high school class, but the level of rigor, the level of the curriculum, it is difficult enough that it's considered college level rigor. Now, there's 2 benefits to taking AP classes, and kind of like these are 2 different separate things. One is that if you take an AP class, or if you don't, you can sign up, and every May they give AP exams. They're just only on like 1 day per test. And most colleges, if you get a score of a 3, 4, or 5, 5 is a maximum, then you could actually, when you go on to college, those actually count as college credits. Like you're starting college with units or college credits already on your college transcript. So that's one thing, is that score on the test can get you college credit once you leave high school and enter college. The other thing is, whether or not you take an AP exam, you get a grade in that class like you do in any other class. And if you get a grade of an A, B, or C in an AP course, it gives you 1 extra point in your high school GPA. Now, does it give you an extra point if you get a D or an F? No, it does not. Unfortunately, you would have to earn an A, B, or a C to get that extra 1 point in your GPA. So those are 2 of the benefits of AP classes. One is that it prepares you for this exam, that if you take it in May, a score on that exam could give you college credit. But the other benefit is that while you're in high school, on your high school transcript, a grade of like an A, B, or C in an AP course does give you an extra point. A through G classes, that is just the pattern of classes, like how many years of math, how many years of English, etc. And most of you already signed up to take that. You're kind of on that path already. Now, the SAT or ACT is a college admissions test that used to be required by nearly every university or 4-year university. But during the pandemic, when they couldn't give the SAT or ACT for a long time, community colleges in California are all test blind. They don't look at a test score for admission. CSUs changed and adopted a test blind admissions policy. So like San Diego State, all the UCs, like UC San Diego, they adopted a test blind admissions policy, so they will not look at a test score. And all the privates in California became test optional. So if you take an SAT in high school and you're happy with your score and you think it will help your application, and that university considers it optional or they'll consider it, it could help your application packet, but it's not required. So that's a lot of information. I'm going to pause, like I said, and check and see if there's anything in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, I don't see anything right now. All right, I will keep going. But again, please do put anything in there if you need clarification or if you need further information. I'll do my best to answer it. Okay. So when a college uses the GPA, you yourself are going to see on your transcript different GPAs. There's going to be one with and without PE. There's going to be weighted and unweighted. There's going to be 9 through 12th grade and 10 through 12th grade. It gets kind of confusing. So like, which GPA is your quote real GPA? So this does vary from college to college, but I will say that for all the UCs and all the CSUs, so for example, UC San Diego, UCLA, UC Berkeley, or for CSUs, you could say San Diego State, CSU San Marcos, Long Beach, Chico, whatever, that when they're looking at the GPA piece of your application, they're only going to use the GPA based on the classes that you took in grades 10 and 11. So basically from the summer after 9th grade through the summer after 11th grade, anything in grade 10 and grade 11, they will consider that as your GPA. The reason they don't consider 9, they're still looking at your 9th grade classes and making sure you didn't get D's or F's in anything. But for them, the 10th and 11th grade is the most important time and your biggest chance to take AP classes. And they can't yet look at 12th grade grades because you're applying usually in November of your 12th grade year. Well, in November, your first semester grades haven't come out yet. So they can't base it yet on any 12th grade grades. So it's based on classes taken in grades 10 and 11. It is weighted, so you do get extra points for approved honors and AP classes. It does not include PE, so if you get an A in PE, good for you, but at the same time, that's not going to count in your GPA for college. It's only based on the A through G courses, which I'll explain what those are, and any D's or F's disqualify you from being admitted to those colleges or universities. So you've got to be getting at least the A's, B's, and C's. All right. Like I said, they're not technically using your GPA from any classes you took in grade 9 and grade 12 when they're making the admissions decision, but a couple caveats. If you get a D or an F in any A through G course in any grade 9, 10, 11, or 12, it can disqualify you from being admitted to most universities. What if you start out a little not so great, like maybe you're getting straight C's your freshman year? That might work out okay if you then got all A's and B's in your sophomore and junior year. Now, I will tell you this, most students that get straight C's their freshman year don't tend to go on and have a massive improvement, but some do. And if that's you and that's your story, it's that 10th and 11th grade GPA that colleges are really going to focus on. Also, if you're accepted, but then your first semester or second semester senior year grades come out and man, you got senioritis and those grades are not good, the college can do what they call rescind or take back their acceptance. They can say, well, we admitted you with a 4.2 GPA and now you only have a 3.5 GPA. That's not going to work for us. So you are no longer accepted. So no, you can't just slack off in those other grades, but when they're technically making the decision, they're basing it on a number that's just from your 10th and 11th grade classes, the grades earned in those classes. This is the A through G list that I was talking about. They're requiring at least 2 years of history, 4 years of English, 3 years of math are required, but 4 are recommended. 2 years of science are required, but 3 are recommended. And with language other than English, 2 years are required, but 3 are recommended. And also both years have to be in the same language. It can't be like Spanish 1 and then French 1. And also ASL, if your school offers American Sign Language or you're taking ASL as a college class, that does count as a language other than English. A year of visual or performing arts, and then a year of an elective. They do have a guide if you want to check your specific high school and see like, okay, well, which class counts as my year of math or my 2 years of science, or is this considered an A through G class? There is the UC Office of the President does have a guide to guide you through that. So when colleges are looking at you and they're reviewing your application, they're looking at many different things, and the GPA and the A through G classes, that's 2 different things. So one little category is GPA. And remember, that's just based on grades earned in sophomore and junior year of high school. A through G classes, they're looking at all your classes that you took in 9th through 12th grade. They even look at middle school for math and a language other than English. So like if you took integrated 1 in middle school or you're taking algebra 1 in middle school, they will look back that far in terms of math and language other than English. They don't look back that far for English, history, science, anything else, but they do for math and LOTE. It can show a student takes advantage of rigor and challenge, and it's balanced by how many courses your high school offers. So if your high school doesn't offer any AP classes, that's not going to be held against you. You're only being evaluated compared to other 12th graders at your school, not to everyone from across the state or the country who applies to a university. Okay, all right, I'm going to pause here for a second and just see if there's any questions. Okay, I still don't see any at this time. All right, we'll just keep motoring through. Okay, so parents, you might be more familiar with this. Students, especially if you're like 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, this might not be as familiar to you, but this kind of gives you an idea of the different types of degrees, where you can get that degree, and how long it usually takes to get that kind of degree or certification. So I have this split up into what's called undergraduate and graduate level. So if you want to get into a hands-on career, technical trade, vocational course, there's a lot of times either a community college or a career school that can oftentimes, these certification programs, let's say that you want to do heating and air conditioning, electronics, automotive technology, culinary, fire science, veterinary technology, medical technology. There's a lot of times degrees that you can get in as short as less than 1 year or 1 to 2 years that can result in something where you can start, if you are wanting to start your career right away, like age 19 or 20, you could be an administrative assistant. You could get into, like I said, a lot of kind of hands-on or vocational things. I know the community college system around here is awesome. I mean, you can learn how to be a pastry chef, a welder. It's like amazing, all the classes that they offer. A lot of times people will say an associate's degree is the same as kind of like 2 years of college. So if you were to go to college for 2 years full time, you could probably earn an associate's degree. What kind of career could that get you? Well, you wouldn't be able to be, for example, like a dentist or a lawyer, but you could be a dental hygienist, or you could be a paralegal who works in a law office, or you could be an accountant. Usually that takes about 2 years. Now, the bachelor's degree is the one people often are talking about when they say a college degree. This usually takes 4 years if you're going full time. And that's like, say, for example, you wanted to be a marketing manager, an engineer. There's a million other careers that a bachelor's degree can get you to that level. And that's considered your undergraduate degree. Now, for a lot of people, education at that point, they're like, okay, I've done college. It's time for me to get into the job market, and the job that I want only requires a bachelor's degree. I'm good to go. However, there are certain other careers that you're going to have to look for a higher education than that. And so I'll give you some examples. If you wanted to be something like a school counselor, get a K-12 teaching credential and teach high school or elementary school. If you wanted to be an occupational therapist, there are additional like credentialing programs beyond your bachelor's that you would have to pursue probably for another year minimum. What if you wanted to be a lawyer? Well, then you'd have to go to law school, which is typically 3 years if you go full time. At the end of that, you would get a Juris Doctor degree. You could put JD after your name, and you could be an attorney or a lawyer. So that would be like an example of something where you need a master's level type degree. And then the highest level would probably be a doctorate degree, something like a medical doctorate, a veterinarian, going to medical school for 4 years or more, plus you have your internship and your residency. So notice that, like, if you look at medical doctor, if you're talking about years after high school, you have to get your bachelor's, probably like in a science, and then you have to go to 4 years of medical school. Well, that's 8 years after high school. Then you have to do like internship and residency and maybe look at a specialty. That might be another 2 to 5 years. So definitely you're looking at a lot of school to become something like an MD. What are the benefits? I mean, an amazingly rewarding career with a very high salary. So all depends on where you want to go, but just kind of keep in mind that college doesn't have to look the same for everybody. There's no such thing as college is exactly 4 years and you're done. You can go part-time, you can go full-time, you can change your mind and change your major. You can do your undergraduate degree at one college and your graduate at another. So college doesn't always look the same. It doesn't always cost the same. There's lots of different ways to do it, just depending on what you ultimately want to get out of it. I also want to point out that there are 2 different ways to get a bachelor's degree, and because that's the most popular degree, or people are like, when they say college degree, they mean bachelor's degree. I wanted to point out that there's 2 different ways to get the exact same bachelor's degree, depending on which works better for you. You could go 4 years, possibly a little more, full-time at a university. Say, for example, I go to UC San Diego for 4+ years, or maybe San Diego State. At the end of that, if I went full time, I could probably get my bachelor's degree in 4 years. If I didn't want to go that path, maybe I wasn't ready for a university, maybe I wanted to still live at home for a while, maybe I hadn't decided what I wanted to major in yet, or I was just the cost of tuition was just too much and I couldn't figure it out at this time, maybe I could start and go 2 years at a community college. But if I go 2 years full-time at a community college, I can then apply to transfer and do my junior and senior year and finish it at any university that accepts transfers from that community college. So at the end of it, I could still graduate with a bachelor's degree in the same amount of time from, could be UC San Diego, San Diego State. Again, I'm just using local examples, but those are two different ways to get the same bachelor's degree. And I just want to make sure people understand it's the same degree you get at the end, but sometimes people want to start right at a university because they want a dorm and to live on campus, or they want to start at a community college because it gives them a lot more flexibility and it's a lot lower cost. So those are some different options you can think about to get a bachelor's degree. All right, so let's talk about the systems of higher education. In California, we have a great community college system. Locally here, just some examples: City College, Mesa, Miramar, College of Continuing Education. We have Southwestern, we have Miracosta, Palomar, Grossmont, Cuyamaca. We have awesome colleges. We also have a CSU, the California State University system, and the local example would be San Diego State and the North County Cal State San Marcos. Even farther north than that is Cal State Fullerton. And then I think there's a total of 23 CSUs. The UC is another public California university system. There's not quite as many of these, more like 9 or 10 instead of 23. We have UC San Diego locally. We have UC Irvine, I think is the closest one to us to the north, UCLA. And then of course there's Davis, Santa Barbara, Merced, Berkeley, et cetera. There are also private and vocational colleges. An example in San Diego would be the University of San Diego. It's in the Linda Vista neighborhood. It's a Catholic-based university. Point Loma Nazarene University in Point Loma neighborhood. And then further north up in the LA area, we have USC, the University of Southern California. So this is not an exhaustive list, but it just gives you some examples of logos you might be familiar with or colleges that you might be familiar with. And so I'm going to kind of go into, well, what are each of these systems like, and what are the pluses and minuses of each one? Before I do that, I am going to just stop and look for questions. Okay, I don't see any. All right, I will continue. All right. So when you're talking about being admitted to college, community colleges, they are very accepting. They have a free application. All you have to do is either have a high school diploma or GED or be 18, and that is the basis for admission, is applying basically, right? So they're not saying you have to have a certain GPA, you have to have certain test scores, none of that. It is meant for community, for people to come, and it's first come, first served. Now, if you're applying to a four-year university right after high school, then they are going to look at your GPA. They are going to look at your courses that you took. They also might consider additional things like, did you take an SAT, or were you involved in community service or leadership? They might ask you to write an essay or a personal insight question. So the four-year universities are more competitive to get into, and they are definitely looking at a lot more factors than, say, for example, a community college would be. So the community college system, like I said, there's almost 120 campuses in California. They offer associate's degrees, vocational degrees, certificates. A couple of them do offer bachelor's now. Like I saw that locally, they're going to start offering a bachelor's in cybersecurity at one of the local community colleges. So usually the highest degree you can get at a community college is an associate's, but there are a couple specialized programs at a couple of local colleges where you could actually get a bachelor's degree there. The cost is incredibly low. If you were to go full-time for 1 year of classes, like fall semester, spring semester, the total cost would only probably be about $1,200, $1,300 a year. But they have something called the College Promise, which means that for students, regardless of your parents' family income, regardless if they're millionaires or zeronaires, it is basically 2 years full-time free tuition if you apply out of high school. And if you go there for your freshman and sophomore year, I'm not saying they'll pay for all your expenses, but the tuition part full-time tuition for freshman and sophomore year of college will be free at a California community college. So that's a pretty amazing opportunity, especially if you want to check out their programs and or you know where you want to transfer, but you want to start someplace that you're like, hey, if I can take tuition off the table and if I can live at home and save money that way, this would be awesome for me, then the community college would be a great option. So what are the benefits and limitations? Benefits, there's always one close to home. It's easier to commute. The admissions process is not competitive. Their application is free. It's very affordable for California residents. And in fact, it's free tuition with a Promise Scholarship. You get a similar general education as you would at a university. They have a lot of flexibility and you can start there, do your freshman, sophomore year, and then apply to transfer to university and finish your junior, senior year. So this sounds wonderful, but of course there are limitations as well. And so one of the limitations is a lot of times the highest degree is an associate's or 2-year degree. And none of the local community colleges currently have dorms. I know some of them are working on that, but currently you would have to, you know, live in an apartment or with friends or at home with parents, that type of thing, because there's not on-campus housing for most California community colleges. I do also want people to know that there are a lot of jobs and careers that you can get into with a community college degree that usually will take you maybe 2 years, maybe less, maybe a little bit more. But I know, like, for example, Grossmont College has an excellent respiratory therapy program, and respiratory therapy is a great career that is a really well-paid career. You can take classes in electrician, carpentry, appliance repair, cybersecurity, web development, marketing, legal and paralegal, computer support, medical records. There's a lot of things that you can do with a community college degree. All right. Next system is the California State University. As I said, there are 23 of these. You can see we're the farthest south, San Diego State, and it goes all the way up to the farthest north, which is Humboldt State University. Now, the cost of attendance here is much greater. You saw the tuition, if you were even paying it, which you wouldn't because of the promise, but if you were paying tuition at a community college out of pocket, it would be about $1,200 a year. Well, at the CSUs, it jumps to about $7,000 or $8,000 a year for just the tuition part. So they are going to look at your coursework. They do require a minimum of a 2.5 GPA, and sometimes that's not enough to get you into a competitive CSU. They are not using the SAT or ACT, and they do all have transfer agreements where you can apply to transfer from a community college to a CSU. So being 23 of them in the state, we have 2 in our county, so they're relatively close to home. They're designed to select the top third of California high school graduates. A lot of times they give priority admission to students who live in their local service area. They are a public university system, and if you're a California resident, so that you can get that in-state tuition, it's definitely more affordable. I think I said the tuition was about $7,000 or $8,000 a year. That's if you're a California resident. If you came here from like Florida, you would be paying about 3 times that. So that is the benefit of having a public university when you are a resident of that state. They offer bachelor's degrees and higher. They all have an option to live on campus. What are some of the drawbacks of a CSU? Well, it is definitely more expensive than a community college, and they do tend to have some majors that can be impacted and difficult to get into, competitive. Next is the UC system. It's another public university system. There are not quite as many campuses, fewer than half. And these are the 10 campuses. San Francisco, you cannot apply to as a freshman. It's only a graduate school. It's a medical program. So Davis, Berkeley, Merced, Santa Cruz, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, Riverside, Irvine, and San Diego are the ones that you could apply to right out of high school. The cost of attendance here, again, it's about twice that of the CSU, not the total cost of attendance, but the tuition part. So this year, UC tuition is about $14,000 a year. That's just for the tuition part. That doesn't include food or housing or anything like that. It is competitive to get into. You need at least a 3.0 GPA. And again, that might not be competitive enough. They look at your coursework. And while they're not looking at SAT or ACT, they do look at things like personal insight questions, your extracurricular activities or community service or jobs or leadership roles. And they do all have a transfer pathway from a community college to apply to a UC. So it is definitely designed to select like the top 12% of high school graduates. It's public and a good value compared to privates. They do offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees, and they do all have an option to live on campus, but some of their majors are very hard to get into. They can be very competitive to get into in general. And of course, this is going to be more expensive than the other two systems, the community colleges and the CSUs. All right, moving right along to private colleges. So there are many, many campuses. Some local ones include like Alliant International University, National University, University of San Diego, Point Loma Nazarene. If you want to go out of San Diego County, like you could look at Stanford in Northern California or USC. Those are examples of privates. So their admissions requirement is going to actually be very similar to like a UC or CSU. They might be test blind or test optional. A lot of them use something called the common application, where you just fill out one application and then you have check boxes of which private colleges you want to send it to. So a lot of private and out-of-state universities use the common app. What are the upsides and downsides of a private education? So they don't charge out-of-state tuition. It doesn't matter where you go or where you're from. Tuition is the same for every student because they don't take tax money. They offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. They almost all have options to live on campus. They can tend to be smaller, have smaller class sizes. Some tend to be very specialized or have a particular emphasis. And they tend to have the largest financial aid packages. So they're awarding the most in grants and scholarships and aid of any other colleges. However, limitation, admissions can be hard to get into. Like if you're going to look at, say, a Harvard or Stanford, the admit rate is often less than 10% of who gets in. And it is the most expensive. So the tuition fees at a private university will probably be way, way more than even a UC. So what about a vocational or technical school? An example would be the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, or a beautician's college like Paul Mitchell School. They offer various degrees and certificates. Usually the costs can vary a lot. It is usually definitely more expensive than a community college, but sometimes it'll be more flexible, like you can start their program at any time of the year, and there's not just a traditional fall and spring semester. Check out funding at the end of the program, find out about their job placement and are they legitimate. So there are some vocational technical school benefits. A lot of times it's not competitive to get in. You can earn a certificate in a very short amount of time. It can be really flexible. They offer some good job placement and internship opportunities. As far as a drawback, it can be pricey. You might find the exact same program at a community college for a lot less. And when they say they give an associate degree, be careful if it's a technical school, because that might not be the kind of associate that transfers to university. And just be aware if a college is for profit. So a lot of vocational and technical schools, they're not just private, they're not private and nonprofit, they're private and for profit. That means they're a business. So you, just like any other business, they can go out of business. So if you look at, these are examples of for-profit colleges in San Diego that abruptly closed in the middle of their school years, like the Art Institute, Brightwood College, Coleman University, ITT Tech. And that's because, like any other business, they weren't supported by public funds. They could just close. And if you're like halfway through your degree and your college closes, that's not very good. So I just want people to be aware of that. There are some awesome, totally reputable ones, but I just want people to be aware that for-profit, just be aware, do your research. And then what if you want to go out of state? So there's hundreds of campuses. Some are public, some are private. If it's out of state and private, the cost of attendance is probably going to be the same for all students, like at Harvard. But if it's out of state and public, like Arizona State University is an example. If you are a California student, but you're going out of state to their public school, you're probably going to pay 60 or 70% higher than in-state tuition. Some private out-of-states use something called the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. Like, for example, MIT, NYU, Harvard, Stanford, Caltech, USC, they all use this secondary financial aid form in addition to the FAFSA. Okay, so I want to get into the cost of college, which a lot of people want to hear about, but first I'm just checking Q&A, checking chat. I don't see anything. Okay. All right, so let's continue into the cost of college. How to get that cost covered, hopefully. Okay, so I'm not in this particular slide. This is just tuition and fees for about 1 year. So this doesn't include things like the cost of your food, the cost of your housing, because that varies a lot from person to person, from city to city, things like that. But what this does include is the tuition part. That is the part that varies the most from college to college to college. So at a community college for 1 year, the tuition and fees, again, if you go full time, it's about $1,400, $1,200 to $1,400. But the California Promise, if you're a California resident, would mean 2 years of free tuition. So basically $2,800 paid. For the CSUs this year, it's between $7,000 and $8,000 for 1 year. That's just the tuition part. For UCs, it's closer to $14,000, $15,000 per year. Now, if you're looking at a private, like say MIT, USC, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, those ones you're talking a lot of times $40,000 a year plus, and that's just the tuition and fees part of it. All right, so these are scary numbers. Let's talk about how to pay for these numbers. So the colleges calculate what's called a COA, or a cost of attendance. Let's say for 1 year of a UC education, the cost of attendance is $34,000. That doesn't mean that they send you a bill for $34,000. If you apply for financial aid, if you get any grants, any scholarships, any work study, any loans, private scholarships, that can sometimes all add up to pay this entire $34,000 a year. How does that $34,000 break down? Well, about $14,000 of it is the tuition part. And then we have miscellaneous expenses, we have books and supplies, we have room and board, which means a dorm or rent and food, and then transportation, which could be like a car or public transportation or whatever. So all of those things together is part of what grants and scholarships and loans can pay for. So it's not like a grant and a scholarship can only pay for your tuition. It can apply to any of these things, okay, up to the cost of attendance each year. So that's another thing to consider. Yes, the cost of college is more than just the tuition, but you can affect a lot with like, what kind of food do you eat? Do you eat out? Do you make your own food? You know, for books and supplies, do you get used or new books? Like, how can you cut costs and things like that? So think about different ways to spend your money to save. So like I said, included in the cost of college is not just the tuition, it's all the other things that are part of college. But the real question is not just the price tag, not just how much does college cost, but how much financial aid can I expect to receive versus what would I have to actually pay out of pocket? Okay. So I want to give you, for this reason, some scholarship resources. If you go to calsoapsandiego.org, we have a scholarship page on our website. We also have a CalSoap virtual classroom that has a scholarship search feature, where if you want to look at scholarships, we have them right now organized by when they're due. Like, so I have January, February, March, etc. And even though a lot of them are only for high school seniors, it's good to start researching them now and find out how much are scholarships, like how much money do they give you? What are the big ones? What are the small ones? What are the easy ones to get? What are the competitive ones? So find out what's out there, because you can stack and use multiple scholarships at once. You don't have to only choose one, right? Okay. There is something that colleges have been using for years and years called the EFC, the expected family contribution. And it's a dollar amount that nobody sends you a bill for this amount, but just when they're trying to calculate how much aid to give you, they take what is the cost of attendance, they subtract what they think your family is expected to contribute, and that what's left over is your financial need, which is hopefully something that they can meet with grants and other forms of financial aid. They are renaming this. It's just a big deal. Like there are a lot of changes in the FAFSA are coming up, and the EFC is going to be named the SAI. So instead of the expected family contribution, they're going to rename it the Student Aid Index. And that number will not vary for you. It is going to be the same dollar amount, regardless of which college you attend. The lower your EFC or SAI, like if you have an EFC of 0, that means the more need-based aid the college can offer you. What varies from college to college is the cost of attendance, right? Because of the difference in tuition and fees and other factors. So I want to mention the FAFSA and the DREAM Act, okay? If a student is a US citizen or permanent resident, once they're a senior in high school, they'll fill out the FAFSA. If the student does not have a social security number, if they're AB 540, for example, they'll fill out the California DREAM application. It's open every year in grade 12. It opens October 1st, and the priority deadline is March 2nd. So you submit it the first time while you're a senior in high school, and then you submit it every year while the student attends college once a year. So your college will give you a financial aid package that could be made up of things like federal grants, like Pell Grants. They might give you work study, which means that you could get a part-time job on campus and the government pays your salary, basically. They could also offer you a loan, a government loan. In California, you might additionally get something called a Cal Grant for any college in California. You might get the DREAM Act is specifically for students who are going to college in California if they don't have a Social Security number. The middle class scholarship is for the UCs and the CSUs, and it's a partial tuition reimbursement for students who fall into an income level that they would call a middle class level. And there's also a special grant called the Chafee Foster Youth Grant if a student was in foster care. And then above and beyond that, and this is actually a big one, the college or institution itself, they might offer you their own aid, their own scholarships. I'll give you an example. The UCs have something called the Blue and Gold package, and that's at all UCs. And that is saying if the parent income is less than $80,000 a year, that UCs will pay for the tuition and fees full time for 4 years for a student going freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. They will pay for 4 years of the tuition part, which is a pretty big part of the cost of attendance right there. However, even if you don't qualify for Blue and Gold, you might qualify for partial tuition, et cetera, et cetera. So they give you this package where they offer you all these things. This statistic shows you how the average family pays for college. Unfortunately, a lot of that big blue chunk at the bottom is student income and savings and parent income and savings. That's how most people are paying for a lot of college. What we want you to know that even though things like borrowing is a possibility, that yellow piece of the pie that's less than 25% that says grants and scholarships, we want that to grow. We want you to make sure you fill out the FAFSA or DREAM Act. We want you to fill out scholarship applications, and we want you to get out there and try to get that money, whether it's need-based, merit-based, a combination of both. We want you to take advantage of as many grants and scholarships as you can. Grants are great because they don't have to be paid back. Scholarships are great because they don't have to be paid back. So if you're in middle school right now, you might be like, well, what can we do right now? You can save money. And if you are going to save, you might want to consider a 529 savings plan, because then the money is tax deferred and eventually tax exempt if the student uses it for college. So that might be one way, but you could save it any way you want. You could put it in a bank account, a credit union, a jar in your room, whatever, but it's up to you. But I do recommend saving. If you want to see, well, what might my financial aid package look like? What might my future EFC be? You go to studentaid.gov. They have something called the aid estimator, and it gives you how much federal aid they think you would qualify for. And you can put in fake numbers. You don't have to put in your real name. You don't have to put in your real income. You can play around with different amounts and get an estimate, which is really nice. Students, right now, it's your job to do find out what careers, majors, colleges, things you're interested in. Parents, one thing that you're definitely going to need for the FAFSA or the DREAM Act is you've got to file taxes each year and know your tax ID number, and also make sure you have an email address, because those will definitely be things that they will want to know on the FAFSA or the DREAM Act. Become familiar with scholarships and merit-based aid, and once they're a senior, get ready to fill out that FAFSA or DREAM Act high school senior year. So how do scholarships work? Say that you're a senior, you filled out the FAFSA, you filled out everything by March 2nd, and you find out you get this much in grants and this much work study, but everything added together, it's still not enough to pay. Even with your savings, it's not enough to pay. So how do you make up the difference? Scholarships are a great way to make up that difference. Most scholarships you have to apply for in grade 12, but there are some scholarships and contests open to younger students. Scholarships vary. It depends on who's giving the money. So some are based on financial need, some are based on merit or student achievement or talent, some are based on both, or whatever other factors the donor requests. If I'm the American Legion and I'm full of, US war veterans, then one of the things that's going to be important to me is that the student we're giving a scholarship to has patriotic values or serves the community and serves veterans or something like that. So it depends on who's giving the money. Most scholarships are not like a check made out to the student or family. They're usually paid directly to your college's financial aid office, and that financial aid office then applies it to any expenses like tuition fees, dorms, food, whatever. And then if there's extra left over, then they literally cut a check or direct deposit directly back to the student. Some are renewable annually, some are only one-time scholarships, so that's important to know. You can accept and use multiple different scholarships at once. So a lot of people are like, well, what if I'm offered 2 or 3 or 5? Use them all, okay? And if they take you over the cost of attendance, like at a public school, see if you can save some in your financial aid account and apply it to next year. They will do as much as they can to work with you on that. So scholarships are a great way if you're not going to get enough federal, state aid, and you don't have enough savings. Scholarships are a great way to work on that. As far as loans, and a lot of people get nervous about loans and should we take one out? This is the information that I have for you on loans. A college loan means literally borrowing money to pay for college expenses. I want you to know if you are offered a loan, like from the FAFSA or a credit union or a bank or whatever, you can always accept or decline. So you do not, if you're offered a loan, it's not like, oh my gosh, now I have to take this loan. No, they're just offering one to you and you can always say no. College loans from the government tend to be low interest, and one does not need to begin making monthly payments until 6 months after finishing college. There is something called a PLUS loan, and this is, instead of being in the student's name, it's a parent loan for an undergraduate student. So if you're starting out your freshman year of college and you as a student, you have no credit and you can't get a loan, your parents might be offered a PLUS loan. My recommendation is always use every grant you're given, use all the work study, get a part-time job, use scholarships, use savings before considering a loan. But if you have to take a loan, what I would say is choose the one with the lowest interest rate, whether that's through the FAFSA, whether that's through a credit union, whether that's through a kind aunt or uncle or grandparent. Wherever you get the lowest interest rate, that's the loan I'm going to recommend you choose. And if your future career is not lucrative, if you're going for a job where you can't make a lot of money, students, you might want to consider starting at a community college or attending whatever college is most affordable, meaning they give you the best financial aid package where you pay the least out of pocket. Okay, this is not for a while, so I'm going to skip this one and get into just a couple of last things. Our website, calsoapsandiego.org, very important, and a reminder to follow us on social media as well. Let me see now. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat in the Q&A, and I know this was scheduled to go till 7:30, but instead I'm done with my slides. So what I would like to do now is just, if you have any questions, now is a great time to put them in the Q&A or into the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. But other than that, I don't want to take up more of your time. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in there. If you would like to reach me individually at a later time, my email address is kkWhitaker@ucsd.edu, and I just put that into the chat as well. So feel free to email me questions, concerns, anything you have questions about. All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. That's very kind. I'm glad it was a good presentation. And I will close the webinar for now. I will be posting it later this week on our website, but please, kkWhitaker@ucsd.edu. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you, everybody.